Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's David Palmer, Leo King, and I can't even believe it, but we are here for another Deep Astrology. And of course, this is the show where I go deep into the week, see what's going on astrologically, try and figure out what's going on with all the energy and get as deep as possible. You know, there's so many layers when it comes to astrology, and on this show, it really is about making sure that we are not just sitting on the surface, basic, astrology that was just churned out all over the place and taking it to the level that hits you right here. Now this week, there's a lot to talk about. Number one, and it's funny, doing this for so many years, literally 6 years, like every day, literally, every week you always kind of look at it and go, oh man, there's a lot going on. Oh man, there's a lot going on. And that just seems to be what this whole entire decade has been about, the 2010s. And I always want to remind people about that this has just been a lot going on. Now, this week we've got a lot to talk about. First things that I think is like one of the major aspects that we really want to talk about, and we're going to show in the charts today, but let's do a little overview, is Chiron is going retrograde. So add another thing to the retrograde table, please. Shink! Chiron retrograde in Aries. Well, number one, remember, Chiron comes around every 50 years. So the last time Chiron had entered into Aries was 50 years ago in 1968. So it's interesting to kind of see this this new vibration for us to really feel, a lot of us at least, and especially in a more conscious state. And Aries deals with our independent wants. It deals with our own needs. It deals with our identification. It deals with our courage of the direction we take in our life, the initial spark of life. And when Chiron retrogrades, we start to feel a little bit like, should I continue going in the direction I'm going, or is there something weird or off about this? And we question our own identity extremely. We question our direction extremely. And you got to remember, with Chiron retrograde in Aries, it technically is squaring Saturn, which is retrograding too. Now that it's within a 3-degree orb, that Saturn's at 5 degrees and Saturn's retrograding even farther back, and it will go all the way for a couple more degrees. So you got to realize, like, hey, one, this is about major decisions in your life path that are coming up right now, and whether or not you feel like you've got the confidence and the risk taking to do it. And you've got to mix this with this Sun in Cancer, which of course is always wanting the more comfortable route. So this is a week where we could fall into or slip into a certain pattern of, oh, maybe it's safer to go this way. Maybe I don't actually have what it takes to go through. And I want to actually use this, whether you call this a show or a horoscope, or weekly understanding, is to help you realize that the energy that is going on right now is not because you're doing something wrong, or that you're on the wrong track, or you're on the wrong direction. I think that it's important for people to know that when you look at the astrology, there's a lot that's been going on with, of course, this full moon that was last week on top of Capricorn. Then we had the moon cross over Mars retrograde, and Mars went retrograde. I mean, there's a lot that has been just kind of like, man, I don't know if I can take anymore. So of course it's going to be natural when Chiron goes retrograde in Aries, squaring Saturn in Capricorn, to automatically start to feel like, I don't know if I have what it takes to get the life I really want. Maybe I'll just settle. Now, Cancer really isn't about settling. I always kind of feel like Libra is more of a settling energy. It's a Venus-ruled, planet or sign, Libra, and about diplomacy and kind of finding a fair solution and settling over something, not letting our ego get in the way. And remember, that's the opposite of where Aries is, which, of course, Libra and Aries are different. Aries is about what I want, and Libra is about what we can work on together to be in agreement with. So this is kind of an odd situation here, because on top of that energy that's going on, we have some massive energy going on with this grand trine, with the Sun in Cancer, trining Jupiter, trining Neptune, and creating this other dimensional situation of positivity, which is so ironic to me. Now, one, the big news, of course, is one of my favorite days of the year are Sun-Jupiter days in positivity, when the Sun trines Jupiter. It's always everything's going to be okay. There's always a lot of other directions to look at. But you know, Jupiter is retrograding in Scorpio, and this is one of the last weeks of it, because on July 10th, Jupiter will go direct. And so with all these planet retrogrades right now, and even Chiron retrograde, and you know, we can start to feel like, oh man, I don't, you know, can I really do this? You've got to know your true self, the deepest layer, before you start making assumptions that you can't do anything or that you're not going to be able to. I think like that's extremely important to pay attention to, is to not start falling for this, no, I can't do it. You know what? You've got to believe in your true self here. And you got to know Spirit's got your back. The Sun's going to try Neptune this week. You've got to trust, and you've got to trust a higher power, and you've got to trust a divine, you know, kind of unknown, invisible force out there that literally is supporting your true self. And of course, questions come up with Chiron retrograde in Aries of, well, what is my true self? Or the identity, or the kind of facade of what that is. But really, Jupiter retrograde with the Sun trine in Cancer is looking emotionally on how you really feel. And we can get cluttered this week in doubt. We can get cluttered in, well, maybe I'm going to switch. Maybe this is my real self, or is this my real self? Because doubts start to come up with these transits. Especially when you look at Mercury this week, exactly going to oppose Mars retrograde. Now, this is a big one to me because it's happening all in the middle of all this stuff going on. Mercury is in Leo. Confidence. Confidence in your heart, confidence in yourself, confidence in speaking for what you want. And at the same time, Mars retrograding in Aquarius is an opposition that is definitely a battle of your mind and whether or not you feel like you can take these crazy directions in your life. And do you feel like you're going backwards? Do you feel like, oh, this direction I'm taking would just take me backwards? Or are you looking directly and understanding that you are confronting a backward situation that you don't want to go backwards anymore in? I mean, these are questions that you're going to have to start to figure out and start to answer on your own. I mean, I can't tell you what to do, and you've got to make those choices on your own in your life of what you feel is backwards and what you feel like is your true self and what you feel like is the best for you. Like, I can't make that for you. But I can tell you that, you know what? You need to be honest with yourself. You need to come from a higher place, with Neptune starting to trine Jupiter again, of course, and start to really know your true, spiritual, authentic self. Instead of kind of falling into the trap, I think, of this Cancer energy and this, remember, this is the moon waning and getting ready for a big solar eclipse on July 12th. Next week. So, you know, a lot of this is like, you can feel energetically, oh man, yeah, there's some big shifts coming here in my life. But like, am I making the right choice here? And you've got to look deep into your heart. You got to look deep into your gut. You need to look deep into that truth, which has been kind of knocking at your door for the last, 3 months of the retrograde, with Jupiter retrograde since March. Oh yeah, how you been really feeling? How you been really feeling? And we can go all the way back to when Jupiter entered Scorpio at the fall of last year. Like, oh, hey, this is how you really are. This is who you really are. And the last 3 months of this Jupiter retrograde has truly been about kind of resurrecting your authentic self. So, we kind of are going to go against ourselves this week if we try to push that true self back down. Right? It's kind of like, I've used the analogy of trying to put a part of yourself into a grave and bury it and thinking it will decompose and just go away, and it's coming up like a zombie. And instead of embracing the zombie and turning it back into the part of who you are and the truth of who you are, and looking at it not as a zombie, but as, I'm sorry, and I put you away for a minute, and let me embrace you again, and let me turn you into this power that I have. Because remember, Jupiter and Scorpio is a power energy, and especially Scorpio is where we get our power, where we get our true, authentic root chakra self. Are we going to push that down because we have doubts? Because we worry about whether or not we can actually be our true self or be in that place or take the risk of being that person. This week's going to bring that stuff up extremely, and especially with Mercury opposing Mars. There's a lot even going on. I mean, you can even look at the moon's going to be in Aries and square the sun this week in Cancer. So we're going to have a big 3/4 square of the moon. And when you have a 3/4 square of the moon waning, right, especially with Chiron retrograde in the same sign, yeah, this is confidence issues, dealing with emotional sensitivities, comfort zones. And, you know, can you deal with your comfort zones? Can you deal with your emotional self and not allow those emotions to get in between your true authentic self? Remember that Jupiter is where the doors open. It's where the doors open. It's where the opportunity arises in our life. And with Jupiter opening up these massive doorways right now, and especially ready to turn direct, with the sun kind of amplifying that energy. And you got to remember with Jupiter, right? Jupiter knows when it turns direct next week, it's going home, baby. It's going back to Sagittarius. It hasn't been there in over a decade. It cannot wait to get home. When a planet is at home and dignified, it is like stoked. So you got to remember that Jupiter in Scorpio is kind of like, you know what? Jupiter's packing his bags right now, and he is happier than shit. He cannot wait to get home. He hasn't been in his home where anything goes and everybody's open and laughing and cheering and partying. He's been in Scorpio, kind of in the, dealing with teaching everybody how to be their true self, which is dark and deep and everybody's shit, and sometimes it's dark shit and sometimes it's harsh truths. And sometimes it's like, secrets and stuff we hold in ourselves. So, Jupiter kind of has a hard time with that because Jupiter would rather be like, let's just have a great time. But it's like, we can only have a good time if you bring up your true self here. We can only have a great time if you stop kind of living in a, fake energy or like not literally being yourself. So, you got to remember, this is a big deal. On top of all that, as we look throughout the rest of this week, as we come into this weekend, we've got this Sun-Neptune aspect, which I think is beautiful, because I really think at the end of the day, it's, letting ourselves be who we are and being compassionate to our own selves. I think, sure, we have comfort levels in our life. Sure, we have things in our life that are discomforting to deal with, and we cannot put guilt, or we can't put a feeling of loss on ourselves so much about certain feelings that we truly feel in our life. And with Mars retrograding over the South Node, and remember, the South Node is always going in the direction of where a retrograde is, so Mars and the South Node are following each other right now, which is very rare. And of course, the North and South nodes constantly go up and down as far as direct and retrograde. But you got to remember that it always is moving the opposite direction of the planets. And with Mars retrograding here, this is us going, am I going to fall backwards and go back into old traps and go into old stories and old karmic situations? That's kind of a choice that you are going to make yourself this week. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see old stories being confronted, and whether or not you're going to, what's the choice you're going to make there? How far down the line are you going to take this thing? How far down the line are you going to play with your truth, And I would say that that's a big part of this whole thing, and kind of the ultimate lesson of Sun Trine Jupiter is listening to that truth, being in it, and with a lot of doubt on the freaking table when you think about it. So I think it's important that we take a look at the charts right now so we can try and understand this a little bit more and kind of dive a little bit deeper and help you understand what's going on. Give me 1 second, I gotta send this over. Alrighty. Alright, so the chart that we're looking at right now is of today. I ran this for June 3rd. I ran this hours ago, but here's the energy of where we're at starting this Tuesday. We can take a look at a couple things. One, this Mercury in the North Node. This is a big deal, of course, because we kind of left off last week about this, about really kind of a message from Spirit of, where we should be heading in our life with our heart, what our heart really wants, what it really feels, what we need to change. Mercury is a planet of change. Mercury is a planet that really has a clear vision and understands things. And believe it or not, the universe is kind of calling our hearts to a certain direction. And we need to, you know, for some people that's a very hard thing. You know, Leo is not an easy sign because it's the most fixed sign in the zodiac dealing with fire. I mean, it is the strongest of fire. Like if you have trouble fighting fire in your life and, you know, you're debating on whether or not it's hot enough in your life, like, you know, maybe it's not the space to go. The first thing that I always try to teach people with Leo is if your heart's not burning about it fully, it's not fiery enough. It's not where you're going to find fulfillment and happiness. Why do you think kings build castles in a certain spot? They're fired up about that castle in that spot. They're fired out about the areas they conquer. They're fired up about their kingdom. They're fired up about the crown they wear. They're fired up about everything. And I think this is a teaching lesson right now in our life, right before all this, I don't want to say shit hits the fan, but before all these big transits happen it's pretty clear. Where's the fire more in your life? Where do you feel that hotness more? Where is the universe trying to help you be clear about that? Pay attention to that. And if we look, the moon is in Pisces coming over Neptune, so it's okay to kind of be a little bit wandered or unsure about exactly where things are going at this kind of beginning of this week because, yeah, sure, we got moon and Neptune, although it is in this beautiful grand trine, right? I mean, you know, this is developing and it's pretty beautiful with, of course, we've talked about Jupiter in Scorpio, the Sun in Cancer, and then, of course, this Neptune in Pisces. But all this grand trine to me is really saying is like, you really do know how you feel. And I think with this Chiron energy that we've been talking about, it's definitely putting up a lot of doubt. And of course, Mars retrograde. And let's just do a little count on the retrogrades. You've got Jupiter, 1. You've got Saturn, 2. You've got Pluto, which I know it's hard to see, 3. You've got Mars, 4. You've got Neptune, 5. And then now we're going to add Chiron for 6 this week. That's a lot. That's a lot, okay? 6 planets retrograde. And so it kind of feels kind of difficult about moving into new placements because it feels like everything's against you. Now, let's look at July 4th and take a look at these transits that happen rather quickly here. If we look at July 4th, if you see the moon in Chiron, now on July 4th is actually the day, and especially later at night, is when Chiron will retrograde. But the moon will be coming over these last degrees of Pisces, and this is covering the space where Chiron's going to retrograde back to what we call the shadow period. And when Chiron comes retrograde, the moon will be then crossing it. So this is going to be a very soft and sensitive spot in your life emotionally. Am I doing the right thing? Is everything okay? Should I do this or not? And it's at the same time that, you know, Mercury's past the North Node now. And at the same time, we've got the Sun building up its trine to Jupiter. So that's where I'm saying the call is, you know, are you willing to truly be ready for this kind of new world, and or are you going to backtrack, you know, into this place of old karmic situations, you know, trying to repair things that are maybe irreparable. I think South Node Mars stuff is kind of the loser that tries to win a losing battle. You know, like, you know, South Node on Mars as well is where we all feel defeated. You know, like I don't know if I can make it through this. But I think that's the whole lesson of a Mars retrograde, is finding confidence inside of yourself again. And things that you haven't lost. And with Jupiter still retrograde, of course, there's this energy when it's starting to station, which means that it's stopping, right? That like positive thinking, positive outlooks, you know, all that stuff are very minimal right now. And so I think it's important to not get caught up in this idealism of, no, you know what, everything's not going to maybe go the way I want to. It doesn't look good. Like, do your astrology here, folks. Look deeper. Like, this is going to be highlighting this stuff very powerfully. And the moon's going to be on Chiron. It's going to be a sensitive emotional spot of like, oh, I need to take care of myself better. And maybe to take care of yourself better is to do what you really want to do instead of falling back into an old pattern or an old situation or something that you just don't feel resonates with you anymore and brings you that fire. Now, as we move on to July 5th, things get interesting because, of course, the sun is trining Jupiter exactly at 13 and 13. But if you notice, we have what's called here a midpoint aspect, okay? So if we look at Saturn and Pluto, we've got a 15-degree, difference here. Half of 15 is about 7.5, right? So if you add 7.5, you get about 12.5 degrees, okay? So about 13, let's say the average or the mean. So at 13 degrees of Capricorn is the midpoint between Saturn and Pluto. And look at this, the sun is actually opposing exactly the midpoint between Pluto and Saturn. And this is extremely a very difficult choice in our life that is coming up on the 5th, while at the same time the sun is trying to open up doors, but the doorways maybe don't look as beautiful as they want. It's Jupiter retrograde stationary in fucking Scorpio. It might not be a doorway that has like the opposite, Jupiter and Taurus, right? It might not have beautiful vines and beautiful flowers around the door and a gold doorknob, like this is like a fucking like warehouse door, with some fucking graffiti on it and shit and some fucking condom laying on it that somebody else used. You're kind of like, I don't know, that door doesn't really look fucking good to me. But it's a door that gets you out. I really, there's this old movie called, and I use this a lot in a lot of things. It's called THX 1138. And in THX 1138, it's about this whole entire society that is living controlled their whole entire time. And this guy finally decides to leave. He knows it's not right. They're trying to manipulate him. They're trying to keep him in the society, that he's bad, that he's not part of the system anymore. And what's interesting is when he escapes. So let me show you what the doorway looks like for him. Okay. This doesn't look like a very fun escape. Okay. Like, it does not. It doesn't look like it's leading anywhere as good as the originality of what, the place in which he was been. But when he gets out of that crazy dark door, look where he ends up. He ends up and realizes he's on fucking a weird place with a sun and on Earth. He was born this whole time underground being controlled by people. And there was a doorway out to Earth which he didn't even know existed? This to me is typical Jupiter and Scorpio resurrection, or exiting to doorways that will open you up to positivity, but they're not going to be looking very positive, but they are, because he's following his truth, he's following his gut. And even though it looks like hell, because if you ever watched this movie, the door, they try and make you feel safe. Like, this is who you pray to, okay? Like in the movie, like you pray to this just picture that talks back in a robot voice. They're always controlling you and who you should be. Everybody wears the same thing. It's a very, very kind of scary place, to be honest with you. But, I think like we don't want to be stuck in the norm, which, I don't want to call Aquarius the norm. But Aquarius has also got lots of similarities, right? As far as the people and everybody kind of united in kind of a community aspect. And so this could be you kind of leaving some sort of community situation / kind of leaving relationship situations and leaving worlds that, you feel like you're an outsider in, and you don't feel like you connect with everything in there. And this Sun trine Jupiter, this Chiron retrograde, like all of it, to me, the Chiron retrograde and square Saturn, which actually we need to take a look at that because I haven't even shown you guys that yet, so if we look, you got Chiron at 2 degrees retrograde, and then look at this, you got Saturn at 5/14, and during the end of this week, Saturn goes to 4. So we're within the 2-degree orb coming this week. But it's still within 3, and I always believe that orb starts at 3. So, it's almost like you got to kind of look at this as like, these are really tough choices, and there's kind of this self-sabotaging of, your truth by your own doubts, your own fears. And when you have that, it's not that easy. And then when you have the Sun opposing the midpoint of the 2 most intense planets ever that are coming into a conjunction, and the Pluto-Saturn conjunction, which happens, every 33 years, but, usually is more of like a 35-year cycle, it's hard because it's some of the hardest decisions you'll ever make in your life. And especially in Capricorn, right? Based off more of the kind of, hardcore trail to get where you need to go. Like sometimes in life, and not just sometimes, I think like in life it's not easy to get to a higher bar in our life. And with Uranus still in Taurus trying to rise us to a more quality of life, it's not easy to see the rearrangements that need to happen. Uranus is going to rearrange your life in a way that you're not prepared for, right? Or that maybe the way that you don't want it. That's the whole thing, is Uranus is opposite, of the Sun energy. It is the opposition of it, where the Sun is how we see things. Uranus is how the universe sees things in a different way. And so I think that, a lot of this is this Sun-Jupiter, and Jupiter also sextiling the midpoint, is saying that this tough choice that could come this week for you about your truth, about your comfort zones and who you want, without letting a lot of the fear-based stuff about your insecurities of whether you can make it, your strength. We're all tired as fuck. I'm going to be honest. I mean, come on. You got Mars fucking in North-South node conjunct. I mean, this is tired. This is, I don't know if I can push through, to not let that really get to you. And I know it's like easier said than done, or sometimes it's, oh, okay, I get it. It'll happen. I'll be fine when it shows up. But trust me, when you're in the situations and you see only a bleak door and it looks like an ugly door that's going to walk you through to heaven and walk you through to your truth, we can deny ourselves with all these energies and be like, I don't know if I can, when you really can. If we move on to the 8th, which is this Sun-Neptune trine. So we're going to have the Sun trine Neptune at 16 and 16, which is exact, which is, I think, very positive. The Sun's off the midpoint spot. But what's interesting to me is the Moon. The Moon is making this beautiful, beautiful sextile triangle here. I love. So we got the Moon sextiling the Sun in waning form, and with the Moon, of course, in its exaltation. And we have Neptune here. Like, we kind of have to be on solid ground of where we really feel our most valuable places in life. And I think it's important for us to look at this compassionate part to others, compassionate part to ourselves, in a very important way. Now, the reason why I'm bringing that compassionate part out is because I forgot to show you guys on the 5th this opposition, which let's bring it back up here, because so while all this crazy stuff's going on the 5th, it's Mercury opposed Mars, right? 9/8/42. So that night that Chiron retrogrades, Mercury will be in exact opposition to Mars. So that's another doubt, right? I don't think I can. I don't have the ability to. You've got to be confident in your decisions, and we can beat ourselves up. We got to be careful not to beat others up. Mars opposed Mercury, especially a Mars retrograde opposed Mercury, can really beat people up, or really try to fight for some sort of certain ground, or really conflict ourselves about who we are and what should we do. And this isn't about illusion confusion. This is about confusion of your own divine self. So, sorry the batteries died on this, but this is a good example of all of it at the end of the day. Is, do I retreat from the show because the batteries died, or turn it off? No, you just keep going. Mars retrograde definitely could feel like we're retreating from certain things. And I think it's important for us to feel like, okay, just because I'm retreating doesn't mean I'm a bad person. Doesn't mean that I'm losing. Or if things start to feel in our life like they're pulling away from us, right? That we want, especially. This is a deep lesson of us realizing, well, maybe we're pulling ourselves out of patterns. We're pulling ourselves out of certain worlds and places that are not connecting with us exactly. Now, there's some astrologers I've been watching out there who are saying, this is about, fighting the battle and staying in certain situations no matter what. And it's kind of I look at this way differently. I look at this as, especially with the North Node in Leo and with Mars on the South Node, as the patterns that are being cut are the ones that you don't want to be in anymore, and starting the patterns in life that you want to be in. And, you can look at that in a million different ways and cut that one up and dice it up as much as you want. But this is about not letting, yourself beat yourself up over the choices that you make for what you want in your life. These eclipses that are coming up are definitely going to be intense, and they're definitely going to bring it up, and it's definitely going to be hyper aware and hypersensitive to things. But it doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to get through it. This is definitely the week that's going to show you, don't let the doubt, don't let the worry, don't let your feeling like your inability to do something or move forward into it is going to stop you from really getting there. That's all it is your own bullshit. It's your own crap. Saturn in Capricorn is still saying with Pluto, let's commit, let's get there. This is that part of the trail where we've run out of water. This is that part of the trail where we're run out of food. And this is where you don't retreat all the way and go, okay, I'm backing out on whatever my truth is. Maybe this is where you have somebody in the group who's eating all the food and drinking all the water, where you go, I don't know if I'm going to walk with you anymore, But that doesn't mean that you stop on the trail to where you go in your life. You'll find more water around this turn. Neptune's there, Jupiter's there, Trine in the Sun this week. And so that's a big message that I want to put out to people, and a different way to kind of look at things here. We end the week on Monday when we, are here, and it's interesting. We're going to have Venus finish in Leo, and at the same time that Venus is finishing in Leo, it's coming over the star Regulus, and then it's going to come into Virgo, where it's at fall position. And so this means that we really need to make some big changes in our life in order to feel good. Now, typically I'd say Venus in Virgo sucks. I'd be like, oh, this sucks. This is just shitty. Like, I don't, oh man, this sucks. But to be honest with you, if you look at all the Earth that's going on, we got Uranus, we got Saturn, we got Pluto, we've got some great energy around. This Venus is going to go through some more positives than negatives. So the positive of Venus in Virgo is realizing that we need to make changes in our life to feel better. We need to make physical changes. We need to make changes in our schedule. We need to make changes in our life in order to have a more positive life, to have our projects go in the right way, to even also have better relationships. The lifestyle and the life has to be in a position to be able to have that. So this is going to start that starting next week, but this is also right before the eclipses begin. And at the same token, I think it's important to note that, when this Venus transition happens, it's going to be very important to realize, you're going to be able to make all this stuff happen. And Mercury at 13 degrees is going to be squaring Jupiter at 13 degrees right before Jupiter goes direct. The day before. You cannot write this shit. You can't make this shit up. Like, the universe just blows my mind. And so when you look at this, this is more doubt. Mercury square Jupiter is either A, the over-believer, and then it's like no facts exist that even show this is possible, and then it kind of doesn't happen. It's like the person who, always is talking the talk and not walking the walk. But I feel like this Mercury square Jupiter stationary retrograde, ready to go, it's stationary direct, okay? And it's stationary direct is starting to realize, you know what? I'm not going to doubt my truth, my heart, myself, even though I don't believe. I'm looking at this door. It doesn't look like it's going to lead me there. You're going to have to really realize that with Venus coming into Virgo, with all the positive aspects that are going to go on there, with the eclipses that are beginning, like, you're going to have to come into this eclipse season pretty armored up with your beliefs, with what you know is true in your heart, because when we come back to talk next Tuesday, when Jupiter goes direct on July 10th, which is pretty much one of the only planets that'll be going direct. Like, sure, Jupiter's direct and Mercury's direct, but Mercury goes retrograde in July. And, I think it's important for you to realize, like, pretty much the only planet that's going to be guiding us forward is Jupiter, our belief of our true self. And that's why I'm looking at all this, and I'm looking at the horizon, and I'm looking at the eclipse season, and I'm looking at it like, I can't believe there's some astrologers out there trying to say kind of like, don't do anything with your life and try and stay in certain positions. And there's ways to look at it in a certain way. But the thing that you're supposed to stay in is your true self. But the whole world around you with retrogrades is going to fucking change, whether you like it or not. This is Venus in Virgo. That's what's like, Venus doesn't like Virgo because it's like, man, I got to change and I got to look different and I got to be pure and I got to find the pure self. Like, Venus would rather go knock itself out with some alcohol and put on a pretty dress and go out and, have a night on the town and not, meditate or pray or do the positive thing or do the work or, and I know Venus in Pisces has some of that too, that praying and all that and kind of the spiritual work. But, Venus in Pisces wants to escape. Venus in Virgo is like, I got to find purity in reality. Like, I don't have an escape. And I think that, with all these retrogrades and with the only planet next week that will be Jupiter direct, and I know I'm kind of leading into next week, and I want to end this here, is for you to realize this week, the whole universe is kind of mounting up huge doubts on your path. And, if you choose to go backwards on a path you don't want, it can be very difficult to deal with it. And it's also going to be difficult to deal with it by picking the path you know is true to you, because it's not going to show itself till these eclipses next week and until this Venus comes into Virgo and until this moment where Jupiter comes direct. So no matter which choice you pick, it's not going to look good either way. But the other side of the coin is when Jupiter does come correct and you do choose the choice, you do get the golden ticket if that is what you know is your true self. Only you know your true self, only you know your true feelings, your true sexual energy, your true raw energy, and your true power. That's you. with Mars squaring this space, nobody else knows. Everybody else's opinion's great, but it doesn't mean that they know who you are deeply all the way and how you're feeling and what your private emotions are when you're taking a shit in the shitter, or when you're on the phone, or when you're driving, or when you're walking, or when you're doing these things, and the feelings that you experience and feel. We don't ever get to read 99% of that stuff. The only things that we get to hear are the things you say, and as psychics, the things that we can kind of feel, but that's about it. We don't get a lot of the whole story of who you really are. Anybody. So, my whole thing about this is, these are tough choices, but they're choices that the comfort lies on the doorway in which that looks not pretty and definitely uncomfortable, but does offer on the backside the beauty and the comfort you seek, but you're choosing it because you know who you are. And you are willing to be honest with who you are. You are truthful about who you are. And with Neptune trine the Sun, you are 100% accepting and compassionate for the truth of the soul that you really are. Now, there's a lot of eclipses coming. There's a lot of shit going down. I know. And so, it's like, I know it can be difficult sometimes, okay? But, I want people to know that this whole month, with everything that's going on, that I did my July 2018 webinar. It's available now. You can purchase it. All you do is you just go to inclusiveastrology.com and you push add to cart, and you just do it, and there it is. I'm calling it Navigating Through the Eye of the Storm, July 2018 monthly forecast. And so I think that's will help you, guide you through this month, because I don't want you to end up in a storm. That lunar eclipse that's coming up on July 27th with Mercury retrograding the day before, and all the stuff that kind of hits before that in between these eclipses, like I'm telling you, like in all the years I've done this work, and if you trust me in any way, like there is a way to avoid a storm in your life, and there is a way to find the peace within the chaos, and there is a way to find the light through some of this heavy darkness right now. And standing up in your true self and being confident and courageous through that all is the route. And anyways, we'll end it there. I actually I opened up some time for readings through the eclipse season and a little after, so go to theleoking.com for that if you want to get a reading with me. And thanks for all your support. Truly appreciate you. Hope you have a beautiful July 4th and a great week coming up. And of course, watch the daily horoscopes on futurelife.tv or the app. Thanks so much. I'll talk to you all later, and I'll see you on the next Deep Astrology.